Going back here, and here we go.
Okay, can you hear me?
Hi, Chris. Welcome back. I think it should work.
Okay,
I hope it does. I'm terribly sorry. This was not what this all was about, but
this happens.
exactly. So we'll give it a few seconds, and I hope people can join now. Let me quickly go into the system to see if we are where we want to be. But I think yes, we should be live and people should be able to hear.
Yeah, they should be able to hear us now.
Yeah.
At least I'm feeding audio, at the very least.
Yeah, perfect. Well, then I'll get us started.
Okay, let's do it.
Let's do it. All right, cool. Well then, thank you for joining again. Sorry for this. So welcome everybody. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening wherever you are, and thank you for joining to this special episode of Neo4j Live Under the Hood. So I'm having Chris Joran with me today, and Chris is the head and the face behind Neo4j Under the Hood, which is a new video series, and we're going to talk a little bit about this today, about the series, how it came to be, what it is, who you are, Chris, and everything else. So I'm very excited to have you here, Chris. And everybody joining, you can join in chat and let us know what your questions are about the new series. If you have anything, I think in the trailer you say, do you have a craft problem? The audience basically like to tackle and to see what's up next. So I guess you're looking a little bit for inspiration as well for the season.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
This is going to be like a first sequence of episodes that we do, hence the name, like Under the Hood, where we try to go a bit deeper into graph technology and graph databases. And of course, there are many directions that we can take the series. We chose something to start with, which is like the basic ideas behind graph databases as a system of record, as an analytics platform, and so on, that are not so much technical as conceptual, which form a basis. And from then on, we can take it, as I said, in many directions. And the input from the audience is like a very major guide for us on like what are people interested in hearing. Hence the call to action for people to add their comments.
Yeah. All right. Before we dive in, maybe let's play that trailer.
Let's look at it.
So everybody can have a look themselves, and so you see what I'm talking about. Here we go. Playing this. Let's put us to the side. So it's.
Hi, I'm Chris Joran, Chief Architect at Neo4j. Join me in our new series Under the Hood. Where we take a deep dive into the concepts and innovations that make graph technology so unique and exciting. Let me know your most pressing graph questions in the comments below.
So that is it. Yeah, very cool. Very good music. I like the style.
I like the soundtrack too. Turned out the whole series overall has turned out pretty well, I think, and like the soundtrack is one of the pieces I'm particularly interested about.
Yeah, that's cool. Okay, let's dive in and maybe before we go into the actual series and all the questions I have for you, maybe you give the audience a short overview, who you are, what you do at Neo4j, and yeah, a little background maybe.
Yeah, of course. So I'm Chris Joran, as we said in the trailer too, and I'm the chief architect at Neo4j, which basically means that I have the responsibility for the technical roadmap for the set of products that we produce. I'm joining you now from Malmö, Sweden, which is our engineering headquarters, and it's where Neo4j started, basically, before we expanded like to multiple countries and so on. I've been with the company for about 11 years and a few months, where I started as a developer, first in the kernel team, which is like the part of the product that takes care of the interactions with the operating system, like disk, memory management, and so on. And I've moved on from there in various teams, distributed systems, and so on. And for the past 3 years, I have been in this role of chief architect, where like the context that I've built up over time, I used to help like the entire engineering organization and the company as a whole to deal with problems of design, product direction, the actual technical implementation that we do, and so on. And I constantly work out of this office primarily.
Very cool. Very good. And you have the beautiful view. So everybody's envious of that, I'm pretty sure. Out to the sea. Cool. Well, I guess that kind of leads us perfectly into the first question about this new series I had is how did the series establish itself? How did we come up with this series? Was it, whose idea was it, and what, can you give us a little background on the series establishment, or genies, how it was created?
Of course. No, that's a good question, because it also talks as to why did we pick this initial set of this initial subject matter that we decided to attack first, because it seems like a weird choice to talk about like Neo4j under the hood and not go directly into technical matters, but there are very good reasons for this, and it goes back to like the inception of the whole thing. So we've been talking as a company, like as a group, engineering, marketing, and other departments, about for some time of doing some kind of presentation around like not the praxis of graph databases in like how you actually put it in production and how you deal with things like Aura, or how do you practically use GDS and so on, for which we already produce a significant amount of content. There are books out there and so on. It's of course always an ongoing process. But to discuss a bit what are the ideas behind Neo4j and talk more about the technology itself that makes all the solutions to the problems that we provide possible. So we were bouncing around various ideas, and at some point in October, I believe, in one of our connections, online conference spaces, I created a presentation, and I talked about the idea of composition as a design pattern for graph databases that allows the user to deal with various aspects that are challenging when dealing with massive amounts of data. So I tried to talk about composition as a way of dealing with data complexity, as a way of dealing with data sizes, with query complexity, and so on. Of course, that was a presentation that was like 20 minutes or something. So it was extremely condensed, but it captured the essence of some of the basic fundamental principles that we want to talk about for graph databases. So it became a topic of discussion, and the two ideas of doing a series of videos for the basics of databases and eventually the technology, and this thing that seems to be quite foundational, came together. So a team of people, we sat down and discussed a bit ideas about what we could do, and this was the first thing that we chose, because it is a very nice segue into discussing about what databases are in the first place, and subsequently what are the differentiators for graph databases, why they are challenging in their own terms to implement and manage, and how at Neo4j we deal with those problems, and what innovation they bring overall into the space of databases and data management. So around Christmas, I believe, I sat down and created the first draft of scripts that we were going to present. And of course, we did multiple iterations with many people in the company, so there's no way I can take credit for all of this. And eventually, we settled on the wordings and so on, copy editing. We came up with the art concept. We went into the studio, took a couple of days, and then here it is.
Here it is. Nice. Okay, cool. And I think let's maybe talk a little bit about the topics. So your initial presentation back in October kind of sparked the idea of creating the series. How how did you define? Okay, these are the first topics for the first few episodes, or what was it very clear and very easy to take these topics, or did you have to think a little bit about okay, where should we start? What topics do we want to highlight, and what actual topics did you then decide to go for?
Yeah. So as I said, we considered various directions that we could take this in. The obvious one for an Under the Hood series, based on the name alone, would be the technical side, like do a walkthrough of like how transactions are handled in Neo4j, or how we optimize our queries and so on, which would be an interesting deep dive into a technical aspect of database implementation. But as we were looking at it, and based on experience from similar efforts that we have done in the past that were smaller in scope, we understood that it is more interesting to talk about why do we need to solve the problems that we identify in this particular way. So talking about transaction management in graph databases is not immediately clear why we took the technical choices that we took, without first talking about what is special about being a graph database and what usage patterns come out of it. So there is a level below the technical that is the conceptual, like what is special about a graph database, and why does it require this kind of effort. So unless you have an understanding of that, you can still figure out like how transactions are handled, to go back to that example, but you won't understand the intuition behind it. So it makes more sense to start from that point of view, which is helpful and interesting for a wider audience, both for people that want to understand the implementation details of a graph database, but also people who want to understand how to create applications and think sympathetically to a graph database platform. So we cover a broader audience. It has more wider interest. And at the same time, it creates that foundation for more technical discussions. So that's how we ended up to it.
Yeah, I think that's a great place to be, especially thinking about the technical the technical side of things is not necessarily easy, but it's like the obvious questions you ask, right? If you think, okay, yeah, where do you go? Okay, how is it done? What under the hood? How does it work exactly? But then taking a step back a little bit and say, okay, but yeah, I can explain to you how it works under the hood, but did you actually understand the concept and the whole principles and the idea behind the graph database as a solution or a product? I think it's good, and then you can, if you understand that, and then you like you said, you can always dive deeper if you like, or don't if you want to stay in that level.
Absolutely. Like, just to give you a sneak peek from subsequent episodes, just a taste. One of the topics that we will be covering is transaction state management, and how a query, when you submit it to a graph database, is inherently much less predictable compared to other systems. Now, that may sound like a disadvantage in that you cannot properly plan for memory utilization, for example, but at the same time, it is one of the big benefits that you have when you are operating with a graph database, that the complexity of dealing with a query is actually handled by the system. However, that means that we, as implementers of a graph database, need to develop techniques to deal with that problem. And like we've been spending the past several years doing exactly that. But if you just go in looking at how we handle transactions without understanding why they are complex, then you're going to be lost as to why we go through all this trouble. And this is exactly the kinds of questions that this series of videos is trying to answer. I think we talk about it in video 3 or something, specifically about query complexity. So that's one example of this.
Cool. Yeah, I'm looking a reason to look forward to video 3, I guess. So you said earlier you wrote the first draft in December, and then a couple of team members came together, and then it was time to go to the studio to start shooting. How was that? I mean that there must be. I mean, I've never been to a studio, so is that how was that experience for you? Did you think did you think in advance, oh, it's going to be like that, and then it was totally different, or was it as you imagined it, or how yeah.
So that makes two of us. Like it was the first
Yeah.
time that I made it into a studio, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, I didn't have experience with it, so I don't know the extent to which my experience was typical or not, but it was very enjoyable, that I can say. So we actually did the recording here in Malmö, in a studio like within the city. The team was Emma, Silas, and Alexis in a studio called In Discourse, and they were extremely friendly and extremely professional, and they guided me through the entire process. So the unknowns that I went in with were pretty much handled by them. So like huge thanks to them. They did like an excellent job in managing me, basically. Uh, the interesting bit was the way that we had to deal with multiple takes of the scripts and so on. And what surprised me was that even they didn't actually have like knowledge of the subject matter, they were still able to very quickly and easily pick up what we were talking about and guide me through like redoing takes for mistakes that have happened in the scripts, and then help with the editing process, like the initial cuts that we did and so on. The studio was like really interesting and experience to go into. We did like a green screen. That's how you can see the background in the videos, and like the lighting setup and so on. A photographer visited us to do like behind the scenes photographs and so on, which like livened up the proceedings a bit. It was quite tiring, but overall it left me with a very pleasurable memory. Like I would do that again, at least with this particular team.
Yeah, no, that sounds good. That sounds cool. Because you mentioned the green screen, so obviously there was no actual garage in the in the studio, but the style is a little bit in with that. So did what came did how did that form, right? Is that, was that a discussion you had with the team, or was it whose idea was it a little bit? Did you think about under the hood, like, okay, we now go for the garage setting, or no? Can
Yeah,
you say something about that?
absolutely. So this was mostly driven by the creative team that we
Hmm.
have at Neo4j. Marketing and creative worked together to come up with the concepts and so on. We very quickly ended up in the idea of having like this garage setting, because under the hood like speaks like it refers to something technical and some do-it-yourself or something idea. So this like this grunge aesthetic we quickly settled on this. There were multiple iterations over the background, like what colors we would use, color schemes, and so on. But yeah, this was mostly driven by the creative team at Neo4j, and that includes the music, the editing style. The fact that we were going to shoot with green screen was dictated by the sketchy background that we have in the final videos,
Yeah.
and so on.
Super cool. No, I think I like that. I think it's a different style. It's but it's a nice, gives a nice vibe, I guess. So I think.
Yeah, no, it's we didn't want it to be completely sterile and technical, like someone just sitting there and doing the presentation. So we also spent time thinking about how the animations that we're going to include would follow the script, and the script was annotated so that the animation group would know what to put there. We had references to past material so that we could pick up like the models that we will show in subsequent videos. And so on. So there was a lot of collaboration that needed to happen, but all credit goes to the creative team at Neo4j.
Yeah, no, that's well done of them. So nice work. But
think so.
obviously, yeah, your role is also super important, right? Because you've been presenting these videos, or are the main presenter of these videos. Do you have a co-presenter at some point? Because it's I think in the description of the video series, it says technical experts and what does it say? Technology leaders.
Technology
So
leaders, yes.
yeah, exactly. Is did you have guests with you?
Right. So in the videos themselves, like the first 9 videos, it's all me.
Mhm.
So no one else shows up in front of the in front of the camera. However, for the 2 days of shooting, we've had people from the office, like engineers, visit just to get an experience and to liven up the proceedings a bit. So people coming in and out. And of course, members of the engineering team also participated with reviews of the script and so on for technical correctness.
Yeah.
So this first series of videos is like I said, it's all me, but subsequent installments, depending on where we choose to go, if they turn out to be more specific in their nature, like we talk about a specific subsystem or a specific set of components or functionality, it makes more sense in my mind to have people from that actually work in that area come in and describe them. But of course, we're going to have to see what the future holds for the series.
Yeah, no, totally. Sounds good. And very exciting to see the episode. So we had watched the trailer. Episode 1 is gone live. I think an hour or so ago. So we can watch it together in a few minutes and see what it actually is all about, the Under the Hood series. Before we do that, maybe one more question is how. When you think of the series, is there anything you'd like to give us as a you gave a little sneak preview earlier, but like what's a highlight that people can expect from it? What's your, I don't know, maybe favorite episode that's about to be broadcast, and something like that, a little preview of what's to come.
Okay, good question. So I've been thinking about this, like what is my favorite episode of the series? I can answer that in many ways. I think like the most juicy part are probably episodes 4, 5, and 6, where we go into like a relatively innovative idea of talking about that scalability is all about managing complexity. That's what it boils down to, and it takes a while to get into like it all builds up to that. But like if we were to pick like a high point of the series, in my opinion, that's it. It's the idea that when you want a database to scale, it's all about managing the complexity that exists in your data. And we discuss how graph databases actually do this and what is unique about graph databases that allow them to do these things. And of course, this is where graph composition comes in as a pattern that actually lets you deal with this in ways that are specific to graph databases. So I'm always interested to hear people's comments about this, because like I said, this is obvious to us from an implementer's point of view, and this is one of the areas that like Neo4j innovates. But of course, it all has to do with our users. So this idea should also resonate with our users. We pretty much know that this is what they are doing, whether explicitly or by accident, but it's all about like, crystallizing these concepts. So that for me is the highlight. But I could also answer the question in a slightly different way, which is, what was the most fun episode to write? And that is hands down episode number 9.
Okay.
So the last episode in the series is where I decided to go a bit like off the path that we have worked until like that point. And I start writing fan fiction about what is the future for databases as a whole. Like, in our view as implementers, where do we think data management is going in the next like 10 years? What would it look like if we continue in the current trajectory as creators of Neo4j? What could it do? Like, what is our outlook 10 years out for how systems would look like? And I'm trying to keep it constrained in the concepts that have been developed in the series. So it's like it shouldn't come like a complete whiplash, what I'm talking about. But I'm trying to take it like to its natural conclusion, or at least its continuation as far as I can see. It's not rocket science, like I'm not talking like science fiction. I'm talking a bit science fiction. Like there are some unsolved problems there, but if we could just, sweep them under the rug, what would it look like?
Yeah.
So I'm interested to see if there are any reactions to that episode.
Yeah, that sounds cool. So like a little bit like what could be what if world. So like I
Pretty
don't know
much, yes.
if you ever watched Futurama, but there is this machine they have, like this what if machine, I think it's what it's called. So they
Yes.
can look into the future or in the past and say, okay, if something changed, then this is what's going to happen. So you do a little bit like that. You have your own what if machines with graph databases and look into like the the potential.
Correct.
There
Like
is.
those episodes, like I'm a big fan of Futurama, so those episodes are called like an anthology of interest, part 1 and part 2.
Yeah.
So what I would have asked, like what happened is I asked the what if machine, what if the Neo4j query planner was slightly more intelligent? And I think that's what the machine would have said.
Yeah.
So that's episode number 9. Like I said, it was pretty fun writing that.
I can imagine. Yeah, that sounds good. Sounds very good. Okay. Anything you wanna share about Under the Hood? Still, anything else you would like to say before we watch the first episode?
Yeah. So as you will go through the series, like as our audience will see the episodes as they are coming out, the call to action that I do on the first episode is to keep these things in mind as you are working through your graph problems, whether they are existing ones and you're considering some refactoring or like revisiting it, or equally interesting if you are starting something new. I think this is important, right? Because you can be stuck in a way of thinking with other data models and then try to move those into a graph database, which is like, that's of course natural and it's unavoidable that it will happen to some extent, but it is also important to see if this series of videos is actually going to provide you with a new frame of mind, if it can give you like a new lens through which you can see existing problems. At Neo4j, we always say that everything is a graph, right? And that sounds painfully trivial or easy to say, but it also happens to be true. So this is how we're building our product, like to deal with those problems in a graphy way. And if you find ways to express them and keep in mind the principles that we talk about in this series of videos, then I think you will find that it makes more and more sense to think about everything as a graph. So yeah, please watch the full series. Let us know what you think, and your input is going to be valuable in determining what kind of content we produce next. Like, should we take it more technical? Should we continue down design pattern territory, more conceptual? Because there are a lot of things that we can talk about, and it was really, really hard to cut out all the stuff so that we can keep like 9 episodes of like the duration that they are. There's a lot of stuff on the cutting floor, so we could pick a lot of things up.
Yeah, where would people give that feedback? Should they just put it in the YouTube description, comment section? Yeah,
the comment section is probably the best way to reach us. But we have a lot of community channels as well. Like we have Discords, we have Slack. So any of the community outreach methods that we have, Devrel, I'm pretty sure they will be very interested to hear from you.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, like you said, community forums, the Discord, Twitter, I guess everywhere. But I mean, if you give a concrete feedback to a concrete video, I guess the comment section under the video is probably the easiest way to make that connection. But if you think you wanna reach out to us with some other feedback, obviously always welcome.
Yes.
Yeah, I think with that, let's watch the first episode, and then we can maybe talk a few more minutes about it and see what it is all about. Now we talked about so long for.
Yeah, let's do that.
Let's do that. All right, cool. I'll put us over here and let's get it going. All right, enjoy everybody.
Hello everyone, and welcome to Neo4j Under the Hood. My name is Chris Gioran, and I'm Chief Architect at Neo4j. Graph databases are an established technology that has already transformed a large number of businesses with use cases from near real-time transaction processing applications to large-scale analytics and AI workloads. Neo4j has been at the forefront of this revolution ever since creating the property graph model 15 years ago, and we continue to remain the market and technology leader for graph databases and their applications. Hardware improvements, evolution of data processing algorithms, more reliable scalability. All of these are factors that allow database practitioners and application developers to extract more intelligence from and push more work to the DBMS, allowing them to focus on the things that matter: modeling your domain, understanding your data and your users, and getting the most out of the time you spend building your application. At the core of all this innovation is the idea that the relationships between the data are just as important as the data itself. Graph databases distinguish themselves through their ability to maintain arbitrary connections between data as a fully materialized entity that is as available for manipulation as any other piece of information in the database. Beyond that, your database becomes dynamic and grows as your application grows, not only in terms of size, but more importantly, in terms of the wealth of information it contains. It is no longer a sterile list of facts, but a custodian of knowledge. Knowledge that you can extract, inspect, understand, and utilize. Schema optional, index-free adjacency, relationships as first-class citizen. All these are terms you may have heard of alongside graph databases. All of these are important, and I will be talking about them in future videos, but they are only a few of the pieces that create a new foundation for data storage and manipulation. It doesn't matter if you are an application developer, a database designer, a data scientist or engineer. Under the hood is a series of videos intended to introduce you to the fundamental concepts you will need to take advantage of all that graph databases have to offer. We will be discussing data models and what their purpose is, basic design patterns that emerge when you start thinking in graphs, and how graph database management systems are designed and built to be the backbone for your entire data processing pipeline. I invite you to go through the rest of the series, keeping in mind your current application, or maybe a new challenge you want to take on, and see how the tools and techniques we will discuss fit with your domain and open up areas of exploration that you might have previously considered too costly or complex. We have a lot of ground to cover, and I'm excited to talk about these ideas. I'll see you in the next video.
Super cool. I like it a lot. It's very nice. Very good. Good first episode. I think that sets the ground and gives a good, hunger for more. So
well, that was the intention, right? This is the opener. Also, just side note, I hadn't seen the final cut, so I really like the end music. This is the first time I hear it. So
oh yeah, no, very nice, very subtle. It's like a big contrast to the beginning, right? The beginning very almost heavy and rough, and then at the end it's like, oh, very nice outro music. Yeah, it's nice, it's good. Maybe to finish off, and I think we touched a little bit on this, but Robin in chat asks us, who is this video for? Is this for Neo4j beginners or who is the intended audience for this? I think you said it a little bit, but maybe let's dive into this a little bit too.
So absolutely, no, I think that's a fair question because like most of the material that you would see produced in such a format would be like introductory or something, and I think it tries to cover as broad an audience as possible. I think that this can be of benefit to people that are just now starting with graph databases because it gives them a good foundation on how to think about graphs and solve those problems with graph databases. But also people that may have been seasoned professionals with Neo4j. They can look at this series and make sure that, or get inspiration about new ways of looking at problems that they are already dealing with it. not only from a modeling perspective, by the way, but some of the things that we will touch also have to do with operational aspects of Neo4j. So I think that there is a little bit of something for everyone that they can benefit from. And yeah, I would invite everyone to see it. Of course, it is split in chapters, so you can always take like the pieces that you're interested in. But the videos are not that big, and the series is only 9 episodes. So I think it's worth the investment of going through them and like just ensuring that you have heard about these concepts and ideas is sufficient, is enough as a thing that you can take out of it. So yeah, noob and professionals alike.
I think now that you said it, when I first started at Neo4j and I tried to explain the concepts and graph databases to my friends and family and other people who were not as involved with the database world, I was struggling a lot. I think this series would also have helped me a lot and say, hey, just watch this episode and you will understand what I'm talking about. Why it's so exciting. And I guess this is a good segue. If you are a Neo4j pro and you think, oh, this is I know all of it, but I'm pretty sure everybody has a friend who they tried to explain graphs before and they said, I'm not sure what you are talking to me. Then share the video with them and say, hey, here, look at it in 3.5 minutes, 5 minutes. Chris explains to you the concept, and then you are, I think, further along your understanding of everything graph.
Yeah, so we start like there is, of course, like a learning curve with these videos, right? But yeah, we start as slow as possible and try to explain even what a database is to some extent, right? But of course, like it quickly goes into specific graph territory. So professionals would probably gain more benefit from like the latter part of the series, but people that are completely new to databases or graph databases can benefit from the whole thing, and as well as people that actually want to get into the implementation. Like if you want to check out the Neo4j source code and start going through the details and so on, as I said at the beginning, this is something that you're probably going to invest in so that you can understand the kinds of problems that Neo4j tries to solve.
Cool. Yeah, perfect. A very, very nice, very cool series. I'm looking forward to episode 2, which I think goes live next week.
I'm not sure. I think it was supposed to go out today, episodes 1 or 2, but I'm not entirely sure about the schedule.
Maybe I can double check that. Videos, here we say, I think yes, you're right. Yep. That's published. Yes.
There you go.
Yep. So you can watch exactly episode 1 and 2. You can now, after we finish here, you can watch episode 2. A link to the homepage with all videos I've put in chat, so you can go there and watch them all there. The next episodes will go live sequentially, and you can obviously subscribe to the YouTube channel if you want to ping or just have the series homepage open and see when a new episode goes live. Thank you for watching, everybody. I think it's a nice series. If you like the series, obviously post it in the comments below and let us know. Tweet about it, share it if you think it's a good one for other people to watch. Thank you, Chris, for joining me today and giving us a tour about what is Neo4j under the hood and what you're doing. And I'm looking forward to the episodes. I'm looking forward to seeing more.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me. It was nice to get an opportunity to talk about these things. And yeah, I'm looking forward to everyone's comments about the series.
Perfect. All right. Well, then, everybody, take care. See you soon. And have a good rest of your week. Bye-bye.